Today's guest is Dr. Miranda. She's calling in from the United Kingdom, where she applied into residency and interviewed for all 21 of her interviews from the UK. So, applying as an IMG who is a US citizen from the United Kingdom, she shares all the pearls that she did and utilized in her process of coming to America or coming back to America for residency training. You don't want to miss the pearls, you don't want to miss the high yield knowledge that she has to share with us. So stay tuned. More importantly, she was part of my IMG Roadmap course as well, and she's sharing how that community helped her move the needle in her own career. So if you want to know more about the IMG Roadmap, this is an opportunity to listen in and learn more. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the IMG Roadmap podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Miranda, and Miranda, I'm just going to go right into it, right for the jugular. Can you tell
Okay,
us where you're calling from, where'd you go to medical school, and what's your background in medicine?
okay. So I'm calling from the UK currently. I completed my medical education at the University of Nottingham. And my medical background, I graduated in 2024. I've been working in the National Health Service ever since, and I applied for the match this year, and thankfully I was successful.
Awesome. So, what many people may not understand is maybe give them a little bit of background about
Mhm.
how your medical training ham differs from like what we have
Okay.
here.
Okay. So in the UK, people interested in medicine can pursue two routes. You could either do medicine as an undergraduate degree, so that means going to medical school at the age of 18, or you could do a postgraduate degree, which is similar to how the US does it. So I did the undergrad pathway. So I took a gap year after high school and went to medical school at 19, did medicine for 5 years. At the end of that 5 years, that's when you get your medical diploma and the ability to start working in the UK as a doctor. And once you've done that, you have to do a 2 year kind of internship program called foundation training. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years whilst waiting for my mat.
Awesome. So, did you know
Yeah,
you always wanted to go to the US for residency?
that's a good question. So initially, when I was going to medical school, I thought I would stay in the UK for the rest of my career. But in second year, I had a friend who was really interested in doing the US pathway, and she was like, "You should look into it," and all of that stuff. And I'm not sure if many listeners know, but the training pathway for UK graduates at the moment is not the easiest or not as accessible as it used to be. So that was kind of happening in medical school, and I thought, let me actually look into this and see if it would be a good option for me. And that's what I did. So I effectively decided in my second or third year that I was going to change routes and apply to the US match.
Awesome. So,
Mm,
what is your relationship with the US in general? Like, I'm curious.
yeah, that's a good question. Everybody always asks me that. So I'm a US-IMG, so I was born in the US, and I still have members of my immediate family that still live in America. So I've always been, um, I guess it's not bi-coastal, but bi-continental, so splitting my time between the UK and the US growing up. And I did most of my primary education, high school, elementary school, medical school in the UK, but then I thought, why not go back to the US and pursue the rest of my education? So that's what I did. That's what I've done.
That is super phenomenal. I was just getting a clip from
Yeah.
my Instagram while you were talking, but I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive. So you are US-IMG, you went to medical school in the the UK, I guess, and
Hmm.
now you're going to be a resident where?
University of Massachusetts.
Okay, awesome. And
Yes.
this is your first time applying into the match from the UK.
Hmm.
So
Yes, my first time.
what was that process of preparing for your application like, given that you were in the UK the whole time?
Mm. Yeah, so I guess I'll start with before match season began. So as I mentioned, the process started for me after I made that decision. So once I made the decision, I was like, okay, I need to find out all the information I can about this to make sure that I'm successful. And that's how I stumbled on your page, and a couple of other resources. And one of the things I saw basically told me to pick my match date and work backwards from then. So, looking at the way the UK system worked, I knew that I wouldn't be able to graduate and go straight to a match because I didn't have enough. Well, I wouldn't have had any clinical experience at that point to make my application competitive. So, what I decided to do was wait a year, which is what I did. So, I applied in September 2025 after graduating just a year By that point, I had done all my steps. I'd gotten USCE, and my application was effectively ready to be submitted. And in terms of the actual match season, I guess it's similar to what everybody does. You do your personal statement, your interview prep, your ERAS packet, but I used resources like the IMG Roadmap course and then mentors and communities that I had become a part of were actively helping me through the process. So numerous personal statement edits, numerous ERAS edits, asking for feedback, and continuing to just refine things until it was ready or where I felt like it was ready. And then I submitted, and all my interviews were virtual, which was amazing. So I didn't have to travel anywhere. I did have to use my PTO for the virtual interviews because I needed effectively the whole day to be ready. But the process after submission was not too difficult. I think the hardest part was getting all the pieces together to be ready on time.
Did you find that there are other IMs maybe from
Mhm.
your medical school who have gone ahead of you that have done this pathway, or were you like the first?
So I think I'm the first one in my school because my cohort was a particular part of the University of Nottingham that was like a pilot program. So the University of Nottingham has different campuses, and we were one of the first campuses in the area that I studied in. So I think in my cohort, I was the first. But once I started working in the NHS, I met colleagues who were also interested in the match. So we would study together, share tips, that kind of thing. And thankfully, all my friends were also successful. So it's
Oh
been a
wow.
good
So
season.
your
Yeah.
friends that you went through the process with all matched as well. How many of them do you
Yes.
think were there?
So there are two other people that I met in the last 2 years that were also going through the match, and they both matched in internal medicine, which was great.
Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's 100% match rate for your school then. All three of you.
Yes.
Yeah. That's super awesome. So walk us through
Yeah.
your USMLE preparation. How did you
Yeah.
study for that while in your current program?
So, step one, I took about 6 months before I did my final examinations for medical school. So, another thing with the UK is that because our curriculum is tailored for the NHS, we have specific exams at specific times. So, I effectively had to be studying my medical school exams at the same time while studying for step one. And to be honest, I took longer than most people. I took about a year and a half to 2 years to actually get step one done just because of the fact that I was working part time in medical school, studying for the UK exams, that kind of thing. And step two, I did it in July of 2025. So that's while I was working as an intern in the UK. And I would say the thing that you really need is a good plan. Start questions early, conquer the topics or the things that you feel really nervous about, and just be consistent. Because I think with step one, the reason it took me so long is that I would stop and start, particularly when other life events would happen. But I think if I had just been consistent, I probably could have taken it in a couple of months as opposed to 2 years.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Like I feel like that's a long time to prepare.
Yeah.
A lot of times people lose track if you go over a couple of months. And
Yeah.
I'm a very strong proponent of like the dedicated, like having this period of studying and then test, obviously following your
Yeah.
PME according to target. So how about
Yeah.
step two?
Yeah, so step two was quicker. Step two, so I initially had wanted to take step two when I graduated medical school, but
Hmm.
then the transition of like starting a new job and blah, blah, blah. So again, life happened. So I effectively stopped studying and started again in April of 2025 and took it in July of 2025. And I think now I'm thinking about it, what helped me get it done was because I knew I needed to be ready for the match. So
Hmm.
maybe having an internal deadline to get you ready to go because I was like, if I don't take it now, there's literally no other time and I'll have to wait till next year to apply. So that took me April to July is that 3 months, 4 months?
I think about it, April, May, 4 months about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about 4 months to do step two.
So
Yeah.
looking back,
Mhm.
what was your performance like on these tests, if you feel comfortable speaking about?
Yeah. Step one for me was pass fail, which I was so glad. I was so glad I wasn't part of the 3-digit score cohort, honestly. So I don't even know, but I passed, which is what matters.
Right, right, right.
And step two, I got a 241, which was much better than I was expecting, to be honest. And if you ask me how I got that score, honestly, Dr. Lim, I don't know. I did my bit, but I think God also did his bit as well. So
Yeah, because a lot of people are
yeah.
gonna want to know, like, what did you study?
Mm,
Considering that you're in a medical school that is outside the US, like, how do you know to study for a US? It's different,
mm,
obviously, how the exams are structured here.
okay.
So if you want to give any ideas on what your process was step two, that could be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the USMLEs, the really nice thing about them is that there's so much information available. All you have to do is search. You honestly
Yeah,
don't even have to go far to find the information you're looking for.
right.
So with step two, I'd say the resources that really helped me. Number one is Hi Guru. So he's I think a pediatric critical care attending that does these like revision courses, and his specialism is teaching you how to think like a test maker. And I think doing his content was what really shot me up in step one and step two, because I knew I had the knowledge, but I was struggling, like you said, to understand how to answer the questions properly. So after doing some of his courses, I was able to start seeing the patterns in the questions and understanding what the language translate to in terms of clinical findings. And that was particularly helpful. So I always advise people that if you're struggling with questions and also boosting your score, Hi Guru is something you want to maybe do in your
How do
dedicated
you spell
period.
that? How do you spell that?
So it's HY and then Guru, GURU, Hi Guru.
Okay.
So
We'll include that down in the show notes for people that are curious. I've never heard of particular service before, but I'm always all
yeah,
ears for what works.
he's honestly really, really good. Like, because I think being able to understand how the test actually works is very different to just studying. And I think that's actually just a general lesson in medical education, that you can have the knowledge, but if you don't understand how to think like a test maker, your score can sometimes not translate with how good you actually are.
100%, 100%, because that's actually something that I made a post about the other day because it's a lot of
Mm,
people that reach out to me always talk about, they're studying and they've been studying for a year, 2 years. So I'm like, you need to stop studying like you're studying like a student. You need to start thinking
yeah,
like, what is the test wanting me to know? And a lot of
yeah.
us IMGs will plateau when we study because we just don't understand what we're studying for. And then we'll start
Mm,
thinking we're bad at test taking, we get stuck, we're memorizing content instead of like really understanding, like training ourselves to be able to make critical decisions.
yeah.
Because that's what the USMLE wants. It's about like making quick critical decisions spot.
Mm,
And they throw all these nuances in there to make it
yeah,
confusing because that's real life. The patient talks about 100 things before they get to the one thing that brought them in. And
yeah,
so it's really important, as IMGs who are not only thinking about the test like something that you just go take, but start to think about how you think about the test. Sense.
yeah,
Think about what you're
yeah.
thinking about. What does the NBA mean? What are the concepts that I understand?
Exactly.
And that would help you filter through like those normal labs and exam question that are just there to distract you
Mm,
or a tempting answer, but you have to reason through why it's not the right answer.
exactly.
I feel like it's not a tricky examination. It's just
Mm,
testing like if you overreact at stuff that you shouldn't be overreacting at, and if you can stay focused
mm,
on what's like truly clinically relevant, because really that's how
yeah,
physicians think, and that's physician
yeah.
level think. Yeah.
That's so true. And I'd say, in terms of the other resources, I used what everybody used, Borders and Beyond, UWorld, Ambos, that kind of thing. But Hi Guru, I would say, is the only person that differentiates the two. So he's not necessarily here to teach you knowledge, but he's here to teach you how to apply the knowledge you already have.
Yes.
And that made the world of a difference to me.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, you can't be
Yeah.
studying like a memorizer because then you score like one when you don't see what you memorize. But when you
Yeah.
train your mind like a decision maker, that's actually
Mm,
what separates you from like everybody else. And that's a big difference with scores a
yeah.
240 and the person who scores whatever else. So
Mm,
definitely some really strong points that I think everyone listening should like listen to again. Like go back and listen to that section that I just spoke about and take
yeah.
notes if you have to. So let's talk about research. What was your experience with research and how did that play a role for your application?
Yeah, so research was actually the part of my application I felt was potentially the weakest. So I had a case report that I did in medical school. I had done some QIP, so quality improvement projects whilst working in the UK. And I also did these Medscape articles through a research lab that I'd been part of in medical school. So that was what I had for research. And the way I got them was mainly through networking. So the case report, there was an attending that I did my clinicals with when I was in medical school. And I just asked, is there anything you've got that I can work on? Any cases that are interesting? With the quit, part of the training program in the UK, they require you to do at least one a year in order to evidence that and to pass. So that was something I just did in one of my rotations when I found a topic I was interested in. And
Mhm.
then the Medscape, that one was also through networking. So it was an attending that I reached out to on Twitter. She was looking for people to join her research lab that was focused on health equity and cancer outcomes. And I did an interview. I joined, and then when the opportunity was available, I just did the articles. So when I was applying, I wanted a bit more because I felt like maybe I needed like PubMed indexed research, that type of thing. But I didn't have that, so I just put what I had. And I think I was asked once about my research in interviews, but it was more around quality improvement and my role in it, how I participated, that type of thing. So I think it might be specialty specific in terms of how much research you'd need and if it actually makes an impact. I applied to family medicine. I don't know if I already said that, but
Yes, you
but
did in
yeah,
the beginning introduce yourself that you were going into family medicine at
yeah,
in Massachusetts. So yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree. It's specialty specific. Family medicine routinely, psych, even some
mm,
parts of neurology. They're not necessarily going to look for PubMed indexed journals as
mm,
the to end all be all of your research. It's really about showing that you understand how research is applied in clinical medicine, which can
yeah,
be anything scholarly from a quality improvement project, a small scale retrospective study, to some articles that you've written in,
mhm,
maybe lower index journals, but really more so about what the interest was and what the topic.
yeah.
I remember when you were in the IMG roadmap course a couple of years back, or gone to present at like American Thoracic Society or
Oh
something.
yes. Oh yeah, I
Um,
completely forgot about that.
yeah,
That was
because
the
I
case
remember.
report.
Okay, that was the case report. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
and I remember you had come in from K to
Mm,
present at a conference for that.
hmm.
Do you feel like that was a valuable experience looking back?
Yeah, definitely. I think the experience of learning how to create something to submit to a conference or to a journal was very helpful in creating my own poster. And then also coming to actually present it. I think those are all skills that can help me in the future. It wasn't something that they reference in the interviews, but it's obviously a skill that now I have under my belt. So I think during that time, or even now, any opportunity that you can get to work on yourself, enhance your CV is one that you should take. So at the time, I was just really happy that I even got the opportunity because sometimes that's not
Always the
possible.
case.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, another thing that we should probably talk about maybe is your
Mhm.
actual application story. Like, how did you
Yeah.
create your applications, applying to? Because a lot of
Hmm.
times, we're looking at it from a standpoint of, well, she got a 241. People are
Mm,
listening and they've already ruled themselves out. Like, she's different.
yeah.
She's got a 241. She's a US-IMG, not really
Yeah.
somebody I can compare with. And it's not about comparison, guys. It's really about what can you glean from her story, what can you learn from her experience, and what can you
Mm,
apply in your own life that makes for you.
yeah.
And that's why I'm so big on having an individual roadmap for a person. It's not for everybody. Because
Mm,
there's so many different variables. But can you
yeah.
share with us about what your application process, looked like?
Yes, definitely. But that's really true. I think one thing I always used to tell myself was that everybody's journey is different.
Mhm.
And with mine, when before the season started, I'd originally planned to apply to 125 programs. And that was because everybody said IMGs have to apply to 100 plus. So that's what I was working with in my mind. But then, if I'm being honest, financially, applying to 100, programs, that's like $3,000 plus. And I was like, I can't afford that. That's just a lot of money and way too much for what I can afford at the moment. So thankfully, once I scored a 241, I realized that maybe I didn't have to apply to so many programs. But then the tension was, do I just apply and give myself a safety net, sorry, or do I just take a bet on myself? And ultimately, I was like, let me just take a bet on myself. So I applied to 75 programs instead of 125. And from that 75, I got 16 interviews. But before I did that, I made sure that I talked to a lot of mentors and other people who had done similar things to find out, does this actually make sense? Like with a 241 and with my whole packet, is 75 programs enough? And I was like, I'm just going to have to do that because actually I can't afford to apply to any more. And I think that my application will still be competitive. What other parts of my application package should I touch on?
No, I think that's a good start. Really kind of
Mm,
giving us an idea. So you started out with 75 applications.
yes,
Then how
yes.
many interviews total did you mention?
16.
16 interviews. Did you attend all
Mhm.
16 interviews?
Yeah, I did all of them.
And were they
I
all
did all of
virtual?
them. Yeah, all of them were virtual except one, which I went physically for.
Yeah. What do you think
Yeah.
makes a difference? Because I'm actually hosting a webinar tomorrow,
Mm,
no, Monday, where I'll be sharing insights, from not only
hmm.
coaching you, but other groups of IMGs over the years on things that
Yeah.
make a difference for people who get interviews and people who do not.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think made a difference for you to go from
Mm,
converting, 21 of 75? That's a pretty good conversion
mm,
rate.
yeah. So I think it's a multifaceted answer. For me, I try to be very specific about the type of programs I applied to. So what you'll find is, or what you should find is, once you finish creating your application, you've done your personal statement and done your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
your application should ideally be able to speak to who you are, what you're looking for, and what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of the time I'd finished getting everything ready, I remember reading my personal statement and I was like, wow, this really does sound like me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is who I am and this is who I'm hoping to become by the end of residency. So most programs, a few weren't, but most programs I applied to generally aligned with the patient population I was looking for, the type of things they focused on in their training, and the locations also because I knew that I wanted to be close to family. So I think that helps. I think if you apply to a program that doesn't really align with who you are, I'm not sure you'll be successful because people say that programs also want residents who they can work with well and residents that align with what they're looking for. So I think that's a big factor that I don't think I've heard many people say. So for example, if I put in my application that I want to work with an urban population, if a rural program sees that, then they might be like, oh, okay, so why do you want to work here? Things like that. And then on top of that, looking at the program's requirements. So I would say the requirements that programs seem to be most flexible on was the US clinical experience. But that might be due to the fact that I had been practicing medicine at that point for a year in the UK. And although the UK is a different health system, there are similarities because they are both Western countries. So there were some programs that said, for example, 1 year US clinical experience. And what I did was that I would email those programs and be like, hi, this is who I am. This is my experience. Would you still consider me? And a few programs did reply back and said that, yes, you should still apply. So that's another thing. So the thing that I noticed that they were flexible on was USCE, but things like year of graduation, maybe not so much. So I made sure to only apply to programs that were within my bracket. And then networking. So I think about six programs in total were programs that I had either been to on rotations or I had met through conferences. So I think four of them I met at the Family Medicine student conference in Kansas City. And then two of them were the programs that I did my, what do you call it, my externship, the USCE at. But then obviously that's only 6 out of 16. So the rest were just from my application. So I would say those are the factors that probably play
Yeah,
into it.
I agree, honey. It's a big, big difference.
Mm,
And I
yeah,
always say the quickest way to network, the shortest period of time, is at a conference, at a meeting.
yeah,
So you meet so many people in the span of 2 days that you would never probably meet in 3 months
yeah.
doing it on your own. So that was a huge investment that you took, and that was great.
Mm,
So many other people that were within the cohort of meeting and
yes.
used through that same process as well. So
Mhm.
highly recommend every single year because it works. It works like
It
clockwork.
does.
Yeah.
It does. Honestly, it really does.
Yeah. So let's talk about some lessons that you have learned along the way. Oh, actually, by the way, I was
Hmm.
curious, when did you join the roadmap? Because I was looking back to see, like, okay, what's her background with us? I feel like it
Yeah.
was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe wrong.
Yeah, I did. I joined the roadmap whilst I was still in medical school. I think I joined officially maybe in my fourth year, because I
Mhm.
remember you said that it's okay to join before you're ready. And then the year you are applying, you can attend the live session. So that's what I did. And honestly, the best investment. I'm really glad I did that.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Because I would say the benefit of starting, well, it's starting early and having time to do everything you need to do,
Mhm.
and being able to like work towards your goals. Because I think I wouldn't have been able to match just 2 years out, like out of med school, if I hadn't started early enough, just looking at everything. And people do it. People can take the steps, all the steps in 7 months, and but I wouldn't have been able to do that. It
Right.
would have just been so difficult with all
Right.
of the balls I was juggling. So for me, being able to plan everything, because once I joined the roadmap and I knew that, okay, I need to get USCE, how do I do that? I could watch the videos and learn how to actually network and do that. And in my mind, I was like, okay, fifth year, I'll do the USCE. And then the year I'm applying, I'll go to the conference. So mentally, I was preparing myself, and it allowed me to prepare financially or whatever I needed to do to be able to do those things on time.
Yeah, I get a lot of people who ask me like, when is the best time to
Mm.
sign up? And they think they should join my program like I don't know the week before September applications open, and I'm like, no,
No,
no. It
no.
takes years to build a competitive application, and
Yeah,
we're in this TikTok society where we want things and we want them now. And it doesn't work
yeah.
like that. Like to build valuable relationships, which is really what networking is, it's gonna take more than 4 weeks, right? It's gonna
Mm,
take time to create a network and to have a community of people that support you or your board of mentors. It takes
yeah,
time to do that,
it
to
does.
create your case report, your publications, to even identify where you should be focusing your energy and your time. And so that
Hmm.
you're not overwhelmed with trying to
Yeah.
check off boxes. Those things take discernment first, clarity, and then time. And
Yeah.
I almost sound like a broken record, but I'm like, if you could start earlier on, you can better position yourself because when you come into these sessions and you learn, you have time to implement. And
Mm.
it only works if you implement it.
I agree. I think that's so true. And I think this process is overwhelming, full stop. So why not help yourself by actually starting early? And something you said actually reminded me that if I hadn't joined the IMG roadmap course at the time I did, I wouldn't have actually gotten the USC I got. So just for context, my medical school isn't VSLO affiliated. So that that cut my options significantly in terms of where I could actually go to do rotations. So there was a session, one of those, the sessions that we do once a month after ERAS season
Oh,
had
yeah.
started.
That office
Yeah,
hours.
office hours. There was somebody who had matched, and he was telling his story, and I reached out to him, and then he gave me advice on how I could effectively seek out these programs. These programs were faith-based, and that was something that I'd never encountered or heard before in the UK. So I was interested. Long story short, I applied to two programs that were part of this organization called CCHF, and that's how I got the clinical experience. So that only happened because I joined the IMG roadmap earlier maybe than I should have. So starting early, I would say, definitely is the best.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty cool. So let me actually look that up. You said they're part of a CCHF network?
Yeah, so it's called CCHF. It's basically a group of family medicine faith-based programs. So they're Christian programs to be specific, all over the country. There's one in Chicago, Alabama, two in Alabama. I think there's one in Oklahoma. So basically just different programs that are faith-based.
That is so.
I don't know what CCHF stands for. I've forgotten.
I
Let
just
me
looked it
see.
up and it says Christian Community Health Fellowship. I don't know if
Yes,
that's the same
yes,
one.
that's the one. And on
Yeah,
the website, you'll see the programs that are
the program
affiliated with
offer.
CCHF. Yeah,
Yeah, that is really cool. I mean, obviously, I'm a Christian myself, and
yeah,
I think like many other people, we all went to medicine at some point, thinking
mm,
about it as a purpose, as a mission, as something that
yeah,
God, is allowing us to do on earth as part of our calling here. So that is pretty amazing. to see. Yeah, I'll definitely include that in the show notes as well. For
Yes,
whoever
please.
is listening and has same interest, we'll have that in the show notes as well. So as we
Amazing.
round up on this session, what would you say are your top recommendations for anyone who's looking at this right now and saying, whoa,
Mm,
I want to be like her someday? What are some actionable steps they can take right now that you think will move the
okay.
needle for them?
So first thing I would say is planning. So I'm a planner, so I love to plan. Don't be too
Mhm.
rigid in your plans, but just have a general idea of where you want to be, when you want to match, and what you need specifically to get to that point. So for me, for example, when I first started this journey, I didn't know anybody. I was the first doctor in my family or first medical student in my family. I didn't know anybody that practiced medicine in the US. Now, 4 years later, I have a community of mentors and friends that have helped me through every step of the way. So identify what your needs are and research how you can actually get those needs fulfilled or met and how you can start creating a competitive application. At some point, you will need to decide what specialty you want to do, but I think I decided family medicine towards the end of medical school. So you can still be working on other things whilst you're preparing. Second thing is around networking. Figure out how you can do that in a way that best works for you, whether that's seeking out alumni networks. I know that's something you're really big on, Dr. Loom, but in your university or medical school, who's done this? That you can reach out to. Even social media. There are some people that I've met just through Twitter and Instagram that I can message from time to time and seek advice. So any way that you can get to know people who have actually walked the walk that you want to be on, try and stay away from the naysayers because there will be people that will discourage you or make you feel like it's not possible, but actually it is. It just takes time and a lot of dedication and sacrifice.
It does a lot of time, dedication, and sacrifice. I love it.
Yeah.
The sacrifice being the bigger part of all of this because whew, it's
Yeah.
sacrifice. You're giving
Yeah.
up so much of your life. You're giving up so much time that you could
Yeah.
be spending with family, deferring family, traveling
Hmm.
away from family to go to school or residence.
Yeah.
It's a very tedious process. And so whenever someone just like you, Dr. Miranda, comes in on the other side and is like, I want to use my story to inspire the next person, that's pretty commendable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's amazing what we have to go through. I was watching a video
Mm-hmm.
recently of this I don't know, maybe she's like a social media personality. I don't, but she was describing that from a layman's perspective, describing the match process and how wild it is.
Oh, yes. I've seen
And
that.
and I
Yeah.
thought listening to it from a third party just makes it sound so ridiculous. Like
Yeah, I know. But
um
then when you're in it, it feels so normal, right? Like
feels like that is your
this
life.
is our life, but it's
Yeah,
not
that is,
normal.
it's like everything is hanging on that one little
Yeah,
algorithm's hand. But
yeah.
it doesn't start in the algorithm, guys. It starts with getting,
Mm,
and getting interviews starts way before your final year of
yeah,
medical school, or for my IMGs who've already graduated medical school. If you have any inclination that this is something in your future, you start now. And this
yeah,
is your invitation if you're listening. My roadmap is opening up April 15th. I will be enrolling people starting actually April 1st. So do
okay.
come in and join us. If you're listening to us and you're still wondering, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure where to start. How do I prioritize? How do I network? How do I, all the how do I's we teach you in. And
Yeah,
Brenda can attest to that. So do
yes, I can.
go ahead right now, imgroomup.com, get the info you or send me a DM on Instagram. Just type in webinar on Instagram, or you can email me right here at drloom at imgroomup.com. You don't have to do this alone, and you don't have to be overwhelmed and confused. Yes, you feel like that, but that should not be the state of your nervous system every single day of your life. You cannot survive in that survival mode. So I'm so happy that we got to do this. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Um, I would say just take one step forward and do it scared because one thing that I've noticed sometimes with IMGs is that they have this desire, they have this goal, but then they never get started on it.
Mm,
So just take one step, get started, do something is
mm.
better than doing nothing because also when the window of opportunity closes, it closes. And sometimes you have to be really aware of that in your life. So Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, one of the telltale signs of overwhelm is actually not doing anything.
Mm,
It's you get so overwhelmed that you think about things, but we forget how different our thoughts are from action.
yeah.
And thinking about something does nothing to move you toward where you're trying to go. So instead of
Yeah.
thinking, start doing. And
Yes.
sometimes when you don't feel like you can do, you join a group of people who are already doing so you can get the momentum and you can rely on their
Mm.
momentum to move forward. So thank you for coming on today. And we really appreciate you joining us at probably 10 p.m. your time. And we can't wait to share this episode with the world.
Thank you, Dr. Loom. Thank you for having me.